Most financial advice assumes you already think like a wealthy person. It doesn't. And that single assumption is why millions of people follow every tip they're given, and still end up broke. The reason people stay poor is not laziness. It is not bad luck. It is something far more precise, and far more fixable. This is the wealth code. And later in this video, I'm going to show you a specific cognitive pattern that researchers found inside the brains of people in poverty, one that literally reduces measurable IQ by 13 points. Stay with me. In 2013, a Harvard economist named Sendhil Mullainathan and a Princeton psychologist named Eldar Shafir published a study that quietly changed how we understand poverty. They found that the mental burden of being poor, the constant juggling of not enough, consumes so much cognitive bandwidth that it is equivalent to losing a full night of sleep. Every single day. 13 IQ points. Gone. Not because poor people are less intelligent. Because scarcity itself is a cognitive tax. The people scoring lower on those tests were not stupid. They were exhausted by a system that never stops demanding decisions they can barely afford to make. That study alone should have rewritten financial education. It didn't. Ask yourself why. Here is what no personal finance channel will say directly: poverty is not primarily a money problem. It is a bandwidth problem dressed in financial clothing. The behaviors that look irresponsible from the outside, the payday loan, the flat-screen TV, the lottery ticket, are not signs of stupidity. They are the entirely rational responses of a brain operating under siege. When your mental resources are consumed by survival, long-term planning does not just feel hard. Neurologically, it becomes nearly impossible. And the financial industry knows this. It has known it for decades. Let's go deeper into the actual science, because this is where the real leverage is. Start with scarcity mindset. Mullainathan and Shafir showed that scarcity, whether of money, time, or food, causes the brain to tunnel. It hyperfocuses on the immediate shortage and physically cannot allocate attention to anything outside that tunnel. You see the rent. You don't see the retirement account. Then layer in loss aversion, a concept established by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky in 1979. Their research proved that the psychological pain of losing something is roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining the equivalent. For someone in poverty, this is devastating. Every financial decision feels like potential loss. So the brain defaults to the safest, most familiar option, even when that option keeps them exactly where they are. That brings us to status quo bias. Researcher William Samuelson documented in 1988 that people disproportionately stick with the current state of affairs, not because it's good, but because change feels dangerous. For someone whose entire life has been financially precarious, the familiar, even the bad familiar, carries a strange kind of safety. And then there is learned helplessness. Psychologist Martin Seligman first demonstrated this in the 1960s. When a person experiences repeated failure or lack of control over their outcomes, the brain stops trying, even when an escape route appears. It has learned that effort doesn't work. So it stops generating effort. These four forces do not operate separately. They stack. They compound. And together, they build a psychological architecture that is extraordinarily difficult to dismantle from the inside. Now, here is where it gets darker. Because these psychological patterns do not exist in a vacuum. They are actively reinforced by specific institutions that profit from your predictability. Payday lenders like Advance America and Check Into Cash are not predatory by accident. Their entire business model is engineered around the scarcity tunnel. They know you cannot see the 400% APR clearly when your brain is focused on making rent by Friday. The loan is not a solution. It is a trap, built on a blueprint of your cognitive limitations. The lottery, in the United States alone generating over $100 billion annually, is statistically a tax on hope. And it disproportionately captures income from households earning under $30,000 a year. States promote it. Schools are funded by it. The system is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. Credit card companies use a technique called minimum payment anchoring. When your statement shows a minimum payment figure, your brain anchors to that number, not the total balance. Research by Neil Stewart at the University of Warwick confirmed that showing minimum payments actually increases the likelihood of carrying debt. They know. The nudge is deliberate. And food deserts, geographic areas deliberately underserved by fresh food retailers, force lower-income families into decision fatigue around nutrition, which bleeds directly into financial decision-making capacity. Chronic stress from poor nutrition degrades the prefrontal cortex, the exact brain region responsible for long-term financial planning. This is not conspiracy. This is documented. And it is the air that poverty breathes. Retention peak. But here is the part that will actually change how you see money. The wealthiest people in the world do not have more willpower than you. They have fewer decisions to make. This is not motivational. This is structural. Barack Obama wore the same style of suit repeatedly. Mark Zuckerberg is famous for his gray t-shirt. Warren Buffett has eaten the same breakfast from McDonald's for decades. These are not quirks. They are deliberate systems for preserving decision-making capacity, what psychologist Roy Baumeister called ego depletion, the documented phenomenon that every decision you make depletes the same finite cognitive resource. Poor people make hundreds of micro-decisions about money every single day. Rich people have already automated those decisions, through systems, through defaults, through structures that remove the decision entirely. The wealthiest person you know is not smarter than you. They are protected from the same cognitive drain that consumes you. They have built, or inherited, an environment where their bandwidth is reserved for growth, not survival. This means the goal is not to think better about money. The goal is to build systems so you have to think about money less. That is the actual secret. And no one selling you a budgeting app wants you to understand it fully. Wealthy people do not budget more carefully. They automate more completely. The moment money enters their account, it is already allocated, automatically, without willpower, without a decision in the moment. Savings move without being touched. Investments execute without emotional interference. The system runs while the person sleeps. They also practice what psychologists call temporal discounting resistance. Most people drastically overvalue present rewards versus future ones. It's hardwired. Wealthy people are not immune to this. But they design their environment to make the future feel more real. They use visualization tools, net worth trackers, specific named accounts, not for motivation, but to reduce the psychological distance between now and later. They consume financial information differently. Research by Thomas Stanley in The Millionaire Next Door found that the genuinely wealthy spend more time per week studying financial information than the average American spends watching television on a single evening. But they are not consuming hype. They are consuming pattern recognition, learning to see what the average person misreads as noise. And critically, they separate their identity from their spending. The scarcity mindset ties self-worth to purchases. Status spending is a poverty trap at every income level. Wealthy people, the quietly wealthy, not the performatively rich, largely decouple what they own from who they are. That psychological separation is worth more than any investment strategy. 1. Automate one financial decision this week. Not next month. This week. Open a separate savings account and set a standing order, even $5, to transfer automatically on payday. This is not about the amount. It is about training your brain that money moves without requiring a decision. You are rebuilding the architecture of your financial behavior at the root. 2. Audit your cognitive drain, not your budget. For 1 week, write down every financial microdecision you make, every time you check your balance out of anxiety, every time you delay a purchase because you're uncertain. Then eliminate or automate as many of those decisions as possible. Reduce the decision load. That freed bandwidth will compound. 3. Name your accounts after goals, not functions. Rename your savings account from the word savings to the specific thing you are building: emergency wall, freedom number, down payment. Research by behavioral economist Shlomo Benartzi shows that labeling accounts after goals increases contribution rates by up to 20%. Your brain responds to named futures more powerfully than abstract ones. 4. Interrupt the scarcity tunnel with a 72-hour rule on emotional spending. Not 24 hours, 72. When scarcity is active, 24 hours is not enough for the prefrontal cortex to fully re-engage. 72 hours creates enough distance for the tunnel to collapse and actual choice to re-enter. Screenshot this. Because this rule alone can change the trajectory of your financial decisions more than any budget ever will. Poverty is not a lack of money, it is a lack of bandwidth, and the entire system is designed to keep that bandwidth depleted. If you take nothing else from this video, take this: the game is not about earning more before you change your behavior. It is about changing your environment so that better behavior requires less effort. That is the actual unlock. The psychological traps we covered today: scarcity mindset, learned helplessness, loss aversion, they are not character flaws. They are predictable human responses to a system that profits from them. Knowing that changes everything. If this shifted something for you, subscribe, because tomorrow we go even deeper. Next, watch our video on why a higher salary almost never solves financial stress, and the specific reason your income can double while your anxiety stays exactly the same. This is the Wealth Code.